I'll take that.
That's why I've got the recording going.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Mark's going to be here this week because I think he said he was going to be out on working or training or something all this week.
Okay. So we can just go ahead and get started then?
Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah, you want to go and go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. My son's actually doing a lot better. The pain pills kicked in, so he's sitting on a couch blissfully medicated.
Okay.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and share then. Oh, come on. All right. So I was looking through this, and a lot of the stuff here with HTML tags, most of us, I'm pretty sure, are pretty comfortable with what the tags are, where to find them. You know, video, audio, and then a lot of the other ones, anytime we're working with a website, we're basically using the tags. So I'm just going to brush over video and audio real quickly and have a couple examples. And then the thing that actually caught my interest was Canvas. And I'll just kind of go over that a little bit. So for video and audio, basically the tag allows you to just put in a audio file or a video file and do some minor manipulation with them. And I've just got a couple examples that I've pulled up. Here, let me... if it pulls it up. There we go. All right, so like video files, the code here is pretty simple, pretty basic. You have it within your HTML code, and then you just have your video file, your source. You can have a local file, or you can have it on a server at some place where they have it. And here it's just defining the width and the height, and then controls is a element which basically gives you this down here on the bottom. And then you can do a few extra tags. I mean, there's a lot of different tags that you can do to kind of do some basic things with it, but you can mute it, loop it, autoplay were some of the Boolean ones that I played around with. But you just click play and it just plays the video. Pretty basic, pretty simple. Audio example. Same thing here, basically the same format. You have your source and then just the path to where it is. It can be local or it can be on a server again somewhere. And you'll notice the controls is the same thing. And then you just press play and it just starts playing it. On my last semester, I did a website and I just had to do a couple examples of it. And so here's just a little image of, or a video of my son Fletch a few years ago. His little bouncer. He used to be one of his favorite things to do. And then the code that I used to put that video onto the site is just right here. The main things here is I just use a few different formats actually. It's dependent upon what the player is and what version it was, and it would just go ahead and play the one that worked with them. Then you have your paragraph down here. If there's any errors, it's not going to play it. And then I also have a way for them to download the version, download the video as well. So Canvas, when I first started looking into it, I initially went into just the W3 schools. And I was looking at it, I'm like, okay, you know, it doesn't seem very interesting on what you can do with it. You can do a couple boxes and some images, but they didn't really show a lot of the full capabilities. I mean, they showed the basics, which kind of is what W3 schools is all about. But it wasn't until I started looking into what people have actually done with it. A website that has a lot more information in detail is this Mozilla.org. And I got interested once I started looking into what animations people had done. So like here's just actually a file or a little animation of a solar system that they use. They just have the sources of the pictures here, and then they use the, you know, the different commands down here to say how fast it's going to go, what it's going to rotate around, and based upon that, they have, this is the code here, just a cool little animation here, and I thought that that was a little bit more interesting as far as the capabilities of what Canvas can do.
So is it layering images on top of each other and then moving them independently of each other? Is that what that's allowing you to do, the Canvas?
Yeah, I believe that that's basically what it's doing. Is with this particular one, it has the images here, and then with that, it's telling it basically how to do the movement, and then each one is actually, so like here, let's see here. So this is the code for the Earth right here.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's basically just telling it how fast to rotate it. And then it's telling you how to, where the rotation is going to be. And then it just does the rotation. The moon, the same thing. And they just have it so it's just orbiting around the Earth at just the speed that they have it on.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was actually really cool. They even have like a little clock. And then one that I thought would be a little bit more commonly used possibly is something like this, where you use Canvas to do like just a panorama picture. I could see that actually more regularly used on a website.
Okay. So the image is bigger than the canvas, which then allows it to move the image through the canvas?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and then just a couple of things that I thought were really cool. After that, I started looking at, you know, different demos and things that people have done with Canvas. And honestly, these ones, I'm not sure how they did it. I didn't look at the code directly, but it just really interested me. So like this is the blob that's apparently done with Canvas, and you can manipulate it, pick it up.
Oh, that's you're holding the mouse?
Yeah, so
Okay.
So I click on it, and then it starts to move it around, and it starts to react to things that I'm doing. So I thought that was pretty cool. Apparently, if you want, you know, you can download this little thing, and it has little blobs that you can just move around the map that he's created. So.
Oh, that's cool.
And then this one I thought was cool, a little bit trippy. This one, again, is just done in Canvas and animations, but it's just different images that he has here. And again, I don't know the full code that he did on this, but it says here, turn left, turn right, step forward, back. So you can just I'm turning left.
It's like Castle Wolfenstein.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Wow, Tif, I would not have expected you to make that.
Out of me, right? The one who didn't know what ID10T was, right? Yeah, no, I'm Castle Wolfenstein.
Yeah, yeah, so you could probably do Castle Wolfenstein to some extent.
That's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
So I thought that one was really cool. And then there's some other ones. I haven't looked too much into this, but there's APIs that they built for Canvas called Cake, which actually allows you to create like games and stuff. And I didn't include it here because I didn't know if we were supposed to go over Cake at all, and I didn't look too much into it. But you have like little triangles that have ships, and they shoot missiles at other enemy ships, and it's all done in Canvas and Cake.
Oh.
And then this one's just the fireworks. Somebody did it back in 2017, and just all with Canvas. So the biggest thing for me was, just I thought it was really interesting. Like I said, when I looked at the W3 schools, it didn't pique my interest at all until I actually started looking into it more. It's a little bit above my ability at this point, but I'd actually like to be able to do stuff like this. So it looks like with this fireworks one, all they're doing is basically just taking the things and then doing the different circles and traces within Canvas. So, and then really that's the main thing that I have on it. And then I just listed a place, W3 schools, for the different tags. For the most part, like I said, I think Jan did a really good job of covering a lot of these, in good detail last time. And so I didn't want to go over too much into that, but I just kind of wanted to share some of the excitement that I saw with Canvas as I looked into it a little bit more.
I'm glad you did. I didn't have enough time to get into it really deep. I have to play with that.
Yeah, I'm actually planning on playing with it a lot more than I originally was, just from these things. I mean, I don't expect myself to be able to put together any extent that these guys did, but at least it kind of piqued my interest a little bit.
Cool.
So that's mine.
Awesome.
Any questions?
No, you did really well with that.
Yeah, that was great.
Hey, Tif,
Olan, do you want to go next, or do you want me to?
I don't care. I'm good either way.
I'll go to get it done, get
Okay.
it over with. Let me get my little PowerPoint up here and share. I had JSON parse stringify, and I'm just going to start by saying I'm not very effective at it. Like, I really feel like this one I know it can do a lot more than what I have figured out how to do. So I'm just starting off with that.
Yeah, we can all do more than we think we can. So.
Oh, but like, I feel like I really hit a wall that is probably a stupid one. Like, come on, Tif, why can't you figure this out? But anyway. Okay, so why is it not changing? Okay, so what is JSON? That's a good question. JavaScript object notation. I'm assuming, Olan, that you have quite a bit of knowledge on JSON just based on all your app ideas, which I thought, oh, this is really cool. And then when I got into this today, I'm kind of going, I'm really not mapping the things you're talking about to this, which is why I think I'm either missing an entire concept or I just need to dig into it deeper. But it's a data interchange format that is readable by humans and then can be parsed for the machines to be able to read. It's language independent. It uses conventions that are familiar across languages, most of C languages, Java, JavaScript, etc., which makes it an ideal data interchange language. So then these are just some of the resources that I used on there. It's built off of two structures. It has a collection of name and value pairs. They might be an object, record, struct, dictionary, table, keyed list, depending on what the language is. And then also an ordered list of values, which is usually an array, a vector, a list, or a sequence. These are universal data structures. Most modern programming languages support them. I think a number of years ago you used to have to kind of load JSON into your website because not all browsers supported it. It's kind of what I got from what I was reading, but that shouldn't be the case anymore. It's often used for exchanging data to and from a web server, and that's the part I couldn't figure out how to do. So I didn't get into that. When it's received, it's always in the form of a string, and the JSON.parse is a function that transforms it into a JavaScript object. So here is an example of it coming in as a string. And so when you use the parse here, you load it into an object, a variable, and it outputs it as an object, as a JavaScript object. So with a little bit of DOM, you can get it to show up in your page. So this is talking about it from the server. And I got this to work like from local where I had loaded my own JSON file, but I haven't figured it out from a feed, online feed or anything like that yet. So this, as long as the server response is written in JSON, you can parse it. So you have to do a XML HTTP request here, which involves the ready state change. I don't know what the 4 is or the 200. I used to. I know I learned it once, but so this is the function that kind of runs it from the background, and then this is where it'll use your DOM to put it into your web page. Oh, and this is the file right here. It's, I believe you would put a URL there if you were getting it from a web server as opposed to your own website's location. So some exceptions are it doesn't allow you to have date objects. They have to be a string and then convert back into a date object later, or else there's another parameter on the parse function called the reviver, and it'll check each property before returning the value. You also cannot parse functions. If they have to be included, they have to be a string and then converted back into a function later. So this says avoid using it because they lose their scope and you have to use eval, the eval function to convert them back. But I was reading more, and I think it's less about them losing their scope and more about the fact that the eval function is insecure. So it's a security issue there if you're trying to parse functions, so you should avoid it. Data sent to the web server has to be in a string, so that's what the stringify does. It's basically the opposite of the parse. So it takes a JavaScript value and puts it into a JSON string. And you can replace values if you specify a replacer function or only include specific properties if you're using an array. So you have to have a value in the stringify, and then you can also have replacer and space, and replacer will alter the behavior, whereas space allows you to use either numbers or a string up to 10 characters. Numbers will do white space, so like if you have a 3, it'll give 3 spaces between the output string, and so that makes it more readable. If you have more than 10, like if your number's at 12, it'll still only do 10. And if you have a really long string in as your space, it'll only take the first 10 characters. And then the return value is the string that's represented. So this is taking a JavaScript object here and stringify. This is the command to stringify it. And then this would be doing it with an array. So you have the square brackets versus the curly braces there. And let's see. So on here, this one, the code is taking a JSON string and putting it into an object here. It's extracted the name and the age from the string. And I'll show the code in a moment. But so this one is actually getting it from, so this one, the string, I'll pull the code up. Let me find it here. If I have it still. There it is. The first one, the string is actually in my code right here. Whereas with the second one, So that's where it's pulling, sorry, this is funky, the John and 30 out of it. This one, the next one though, is going to send a request for it, and it's going to output this John here. Boy, sorry, this is not working right. So the second one is using the the XML HTTP request. And so I have a file uploaded right here, JSON_demo.txt. And so in that file, it's pulling out the string and turning it into the JSON. So it's parsing the string. And so then I've told it just to take out the name in it. So that's another way to do it. This one, there was an array, and so you can filter through the arrays and tell it what to pull based on the array location. So this is going the other way. This is stringifying a JavaScript object into a JSON string so that it's ready to, I guess, go back to a web server if you're pushing information that way. And then this is the same thing for the array. So those are coming from this right here. And so it's putting it into the format that can be used. So we have the JavaScript array or a JavaScript string here that it can put into the JSON. I don't know. I'm still pretty confused with a lot of this, but this one I found a little interesting. It's an AJAX table, but it's using JSON also. And my CSS is messing with it, so it's putting it all down here at the bottom. But this one, the entire table is built in the background, and it'll populate however many rows it needs to based on the data. So if there was more, if there were 7, then it would make 7, but I don't have empty ones sitting here. And that one, I don't think I was supposed to get into AJAX, but I kind of got distracted. This was really, it's a lot of code, but it's really cool. The way you can tell it, like right here, okay, we're going to create an element called table. And then within that, the TR, the row, the heading, and each one of the cells is created by looping through the information in the JSON file right here, so with the for loop. And then it just kind of adds on as there's more information. It'll just keep adding on to that table, which makes it able to be dynamic, I think. Anyway, I thought this was really cool, being able to completely make a table in the background without it sitting there on the page with empty cells if you didn't have enough data for it. And that's all I have. So.
Okay, I've got a question.
I don't know if I can answer it, but I'll try.
When you create the JSON file, the data part of it, do you specify a variable or something that the data is being drawn from?
Let me, okay, so, let's see, that's not it. So this is the one that table is coming from. So this is called petsandpeople.json, and I have it uploaded into a folder I call files. And so in here, right here is like kind of, I mean, like you would maybe say a variable, but it's the field table heading, and this is what's in it. So here you have table cells pets. You could call this whatever. You could just say pets.
Right.
And this is the array that it's going to loop through. People, and the array that it's going to loop through.
Okay.
So then with the other one, so that's with that you can also do just a text file, a TXT. It's like this one's an array, and then this one's an object here. So you've got the name and the age and the pets, and within that we've got an array that you can have it. So you can have nested arrays and stuff within. So here within pets we've got animal and name that can be looped through.
Right.
So like, I don't have any clue how this data comes from the web server, like what it looks like, and if you have to make a file or if it just is pulling from a URL that's just live. That's all. I don't understand that yet, but this is what I did today.
That's a good start.
Yeah, that's what I figure.
So normally how that is done is normally there's a back-end application of some type. With my previous application, I utilized PHP that would, whenever you made a call against it, it would query the database for the data you sent it in specific variables, and then it would return a JSON feed that you could then parse and display a table or an entry in the database, depending on what you searched for. So that's.
So I was trying to work on one, and then it was PHP, and like I know how to use PHP, but I haven't really used it in this class much, so I thought, well, maybe I'm not supposed to. Maybe it's all supposed to be JavaScript, and so I scrapped what I was doing at one point, where I think I almost had it right for pulling from, I forget what website I was pulling one from, but I mean, it looks like that's how you can have your Facebook feed and stuff going on like a footer of a website, right? It's kind of through a JSON type thing. Is that, I don't know.
I don't know if they're using JSON, but you could use JSON to do that, to bring in data.
That's kind of the concept of it.
Yeah, all you're doing with that AJAX call is you're going out to a web server asynchronously, so you've already loaded the page, and like when an event kicks off on JavaScript, it goes out to a URL with possibly with some variables that for what it wants. It doesn't always have to be that way though, but it just goes to that URL, and then depending on what it feeds it or just the URL it hits, it will send back data as part of that HTTP request.
Okay.
So that's how your data is coming across. JSON is just how the data is represented or translated into a string. Because you can't take, like, let's say in my Java class, I had a Java element on the server side as well as a Java element on the client side. You can't transfer that Java element through an HTTP request, which is the middleman, that XML HTTP request that you got there. So what you do is you start the HTTP request. You can stringify your request through that, and then your server will be able to reparse that into whatever object it had, and then it could do whatever it needs to, then get a response for you, then stringify that, send it through the HTTP request back to you, where you then reparse it, and then you got usable data that's actually in an array or a variable of some type or an object, whatever you want it to be.
So this right here is essentially the like right here where I have it going to a file. That's where you would have it going to a website or a database.
Yeah, and that's you're not doing any parsing of data. It's just presenting a file through HTTP, and then as part of that, the XML HTTP request strips all the HTTP header information off of it, and then it just takes the string that's inside it, which is your text file. That it can then take and put it back into an array. By the way, the status 200, that's an HTTP status code that means status okay, the web server is up and running. Now,
that's what I was thinking.
I don't know what ready state 4 is. Never seen that one before. But yeah, 200s are all good codes. 400s would be your error codes. Even 500s would be error codes. 300s are usually for redirects or stuff like that. So,
if you put a console.log in your AJAX call and you track the status code, you'll see it go from 1 to 2 to 3, then finally to 4. I can't remember the individual values. One is like, okay, I got the request, I'm ready to send it. 2 or 3 is I'm sending it, and then 4 is that lets you know that all of the data is there complete.
So I'm guessing it's the client's state. Like it has like a 3-way handshake and a status back from the server, or?
Yeah, the conversation, if you were to download a massive file, you would receive a 2 or a 3 a number of times.
Okay.
And that allows you to put an image on your screen to show you that you're waiting.
Okay.
So, or you can have a thermometer there.
Okay.
That shows a progress bar.
Oh, so you could have like this dot ready state equals 2 or 3 and then do this, like if that's the case, put an image there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
You could stuff something onto the screen.
Okay.
All of this is asynchronous.
Yeah.
And you could, in fact, if you look at the response text string, when you have a status 2 or 3, and you have to have a massive file for this to happen because things are so quick anymore. Your text is actually there and it's growing. So you could, you could put on the screen how many bytes you've received.
Okay.
99% of the time, you only care about it when you get the 4 and the 200.
Yeah.
But there's other interesting stuff going on during that time too.
Yeah.
All right.
If you ever want to look up those codes for the 200 and stuff like that, just look up HTTP status codes, and there's a list of them. For my part of the world, the status codes, I use those all the time because it helps with troubleshooting. Because I'm a network guy, so people are like, "Oh, the server, your network's causing problems, but there's a 500 error." Like, well, that means you got to the server, but the server's having problems. So see you later.
I see. All right. Well, that's all I have for today.
Okay. Anybody else have any more
Thanks, Tif.
questions?
Good start.
That's a little still. I mean, JSON I haven't really gotten hardcore into yet, so
Yeah, I haven't either.
it'll. I mean, that definitely helps me understand what it is, especially as I start going into it. So thank you, Tif.
Yep.
Okay. I'm just pulling up my webpage real quick so I can show some code. And since I'm recording and everything else, it's a little slow. Let's see. What am I teaching? DOM. Okay. Let me present here. Okay, so we've already had a couple, or maybe just one presentation on DOM. I'm forgetting nowadays. They're all kind of running together. But long story short, we've already covered a lot of this. I'm going to make it real quick. It's the document object model. It's a way for you to be able to interact with your HTML code with JavaScript. You can target specific elements within a web page by using the DOM model. You can also react to events based on the DOM model. It's basically your application programmable interface. You guys were asking for the API description a couple weeks ago, and I now have that committed to memory. I always knew what it was, but I didn't actually remember the acronyms. Again, when you get so many acronyms, you just don't remember them all. So, but it's a way for you, JavaScript, to interact with HTML. So it can, like what Tif was showing, and you guys will see in my code, how you can basically you can actually create the entire web page almost from your JavaScript. Actually, I want to go back. So each of these objects have a specific set of properties and methods, as well as events that can be tied to them. Sure, I can hear myself through somebody's phone. Cool. We'll just get a bad recording. So the DOM is based off of relationships. You start it's basically a tree, just like you would have in your ancestry. You have someone, you have yourself as the parent, really, in this situation, or the root, and then you have your parents and then grandparents and stuff like that. Well, this actually starts from the top, which is the HTML. HTML is the center of all of your page. He is the root. And then parents are, again, elements that are above you. So let's say you have an unordered list, and you're the LI element. Your parent would be the UL parent. Child, flip that around. You're the UL element. The LI is your child. So you would have that down underneath you. Same with tables. So let's say you're the table element. The different TRs would be child elements, and then TRs, the different table elements of that would be the TD. Stuff like that. Now sibling, that would be like in a table, those elements in a list. So LIs would be siblings to each other, as well as TDs and TRs could be siblings to each other, so forth, so on. They'd be on the same level. Now these are the main types of ways that you can interact with your elements. First is doing a get element by ID. We've seen this the majority of the time. It is when you want to target a very specific element. One single element within your environment, that's what you want to touch. Now, if you want to do by tag, that's the actual type, like the TR or the UL, all those kind of things. You can target all of those at once. Now, the class name, that's when you have, let's say you have an unordered list that all have a class type. And when you click on an event, you want to modify all of those of the class type at the same time. That's where you would do the target or get elements by class. That way, let's say someone changes the color of the list on a website. Let's say it's a customizable option for them. You can then have JavaScript change that element or that class's color, and then everything within that class would have that same color. So that's the different reasons why you'd have all these different targeting methods. So either by an individual ID, like a single thing. But when I think of ID, I always think of social security number. You're going right for that one person. And then when you go by tag, that's by a class of people or a group of people, and then a class, a different type of grouping. So now these are the main types of ways that you can work with DOM. You can create a basic element. I'll show you that, guys, that in my code here in just a second. You can tell it to create any type of element from a video element to an audio element to a table to the TR, the TD, everything like that, to be able to create whatever you need in the moment. Now remove, append, and replace child. Normally you're going to target something first before you get any response out of this. So with remove, you're going to target that thing by an ID or a class or a tag, and that way you can remove the children off of those specific elements. You can also use this with IDs. So if you have a specific list that you want to remove a child from, you can do that as well. And then the write element, that's the normal element that we have that can actually write what you have created onto a page or onto console or whatever you want to do. So that's my source. So let's go ahead and get to page. So this is a basic, basically a contact book for presenting people and their phone number, address, stuff like that. All of these have specific elements to them. So this table was entirely built from JavaScript. I actually build that page as part of, or build this table as part of loading the page. It goes into my storage, which is local to my browser. I did this a long time ago, a couple weeks ago, and notice my data is still there. I use the local storage instead of the session storage. But you can go through and then you delete an item, and it'll remove that element from there, and it also removes it from storage. So now if I close this out, let me cut this real quick. If I close this out, reopen another browser, and come in, it's going to show just those 2 entries as part of this page. It's really slow. So see, my 2 elements are still there, but the one I deleted is gone. So
is that the kind of thing that clearing your cookies would delete those? Like, does that clear your local storage?
No. So
the cache.
So local storage is completely separate from cookies. Cookies is an old-fashioned way of storing data. The local storage is actually a pseudo database within each of the within each of your browser types. I don't keep Internet Explorer here, do I? There it is. See, if I open this up within IE, it shouldn't have those 2 elements because it's a different storage. Come on. Sorry, PC's trying to do too many things. I think next week I might try to run a different PC doing the recording. Whatever. I'm not going to wait on it. So, of course, just as I close it out. See, I don't have anything on this one.
Okay.
It would be the same thing with cookies too, but it's actual pseudo database within this browser. It's not cookie based.
Okay.
So.
But it's browser based, not the actual website. Like, it's not
correct
within your local store. Okay.
Yeah, none of this data is on my web server. I didn't create a database to store this or any type of storage location for it. This is within my browser itself.
Okay.
So this is a
question, Olan.
Okay.
That you had mentioned 2 different types of storage. You said mentioned the local storage, which obviously is on your computer.
Mm-hmm.
What's the other one?
So you got session storage. That's
okay.
Specifically, you're not really going to use that nearly as much as the local storage because it's not as persistent. So session storage is literally this tab. Well, you know what? This tab right here, if I closed it and I was using session storage, all that data would be gone when I came back to this page with another tab. So
okay, so it's only good while it's running.
Correct. Yep. So if you ever close that browser, your data is hasta la vista. So
got it.
So now back to actual DOM rather than local storage. So this is personally, I do not like how I did this. I think there could be a more procedural way to do this. But my problem was trying to update the storage at the same time as manipulating my DOM elements. So I ended up having, basically what I do is when I delete something, I remove it from storage and then I reload the table every single time. Now, probably if this table gets really big, that might be a really bad way. This is going to be a really bad way to do it. But whatever. This is what I did, so I'm going with it. So within this, I start with, first I target my current table. I have to get it first because down the road, let me scroll down here. Down here, I replace that element. I take the old table or the new table and overwrite the old table. So that way it disappears. I also need to get the div element. There's a div element where I use the div element to help locate it within my page so it wouldn't appear somewhere else. So I have a div element here that's just by default. Show you. Here it is. So right here, it's just an empty div and table. And I target that each time. So whenever I place that table, it goes right where I want it to every single time. It doesn't appear just wherever. So then this is where I do my JSON parse from local storage because you have to use JSON with your storage as well because it can't store JavaScript elements or objects or anything like that. which in this case I'm using both objects and an array. So because each of these entries is an object, and then the whole table itself is an array of these objects. So if you want to see more of the code, you can just always view my source. It's right here in the middle. Oh, not that one. Sorry, it's at the bottom. This is the full code, which is within my JavaScript text type. This part is the code snippet, so you can actually see it on the web page. So yeah, so I start off first by creating my table, and then I set its ID to that contact list, because that's what I use to target it each time. So I need to, now that you've created a table element, it's a blank table element. It has no attributes, nothing tied to it. It's just table. So then you're now tying the ID name of contact list to it, so you can target it later when you do an add up here. Let's do my mom again. So click add there, and there she shows up. So that way, when I click that add, it started a creation process for her element, put it in storage, and then finally at the end it calls the update table. So then it gets a hold of that contact list again and starts this whole thing over again. And then each of these, you create the header with its tr and then th elements for each of the different names of the columns, and then it appends each of those to the table or the table head row. Then I take the table head row and append it to the head itself. It's this long process of literally building a HTML with your JavaScript code. So that's all you're doing here with these different append childs, create elements, and as well as changing the IDs and stuff like that. And then within here, I just keep going until my contact list is empty, or if it's null. If it's null, I didn't want to act upon it, just leave it empty. And then this one goes for the for each element. What you're doing here, this is my array, and the for each attribute of it is basically an iterator. So it starts at the top every time and goes one by one. You don't have to create a counter. You don't have to do anything like that. It just automatically goes to the next element within the array until it hits the bottom. And what it does is it calls a function and sends that one element as row data into this loop. So for each one, I'm creating another row. It's a long, tedious piece of code. Like I said, I really wish there's got to be some better way to do this, but whatever. So each time I now attach the row data.name, .phone, address, and email, and then I append those all into one row and tie them to the table. I did have a counter because in this way I could tie an event to delete a specific element in the table. So when you're clicking that delete button, it has an element tied to it, or an event tied to it with an ID number. And that ID number is literally just its place within the array. So this one's element ID is 0, and then 1, and then 2. So that's how it deletes entries within that. And then it wraps it all up and then replaces the div with the new table. And Bob's your uncle, whatever they say. So that's how it works here. So.
Cool.
Any questions?
Lots, but they'll get answered when I start playing with it.
Yeah. Or I'll know what to ask when I do start playing with it.
Yeah. Again, don't get caught up on this first one. That's warning here. I almost did it myself. This is where I can show it on my web page. You see, because it'll have the code, class, language, JavaScript stuff down here between the script types. That's what you want to look at for my actual code that does it. So.
Oh, that looks great, Olan. Thanks.
It does.
Yeah, so this was my original idea, was to create a contact, an address book basically. I didn't for the address or for the JSON feed I was going to use for like states and cities. But since this was literally an afternoon's worth of work building this out. It wasn't that hard, so I ended up changing my mind.
You're way better at it than I am. That would have taken me a whole week.
Yeah. Yeah. This is very, like I said, this is very Java oriented. So it's just really learning the different child methods that are default for these elements. Once you get past that, and I had to keep putting var instead of like int or string or whatever. I kept wanting to do that. But... Okay.
All right.
That's good.
Thank you.
I've got next week's agenda set up. And if you missed next week's agenda, it has the upcoming topics here for next week. So we got Tif, Chuck, or Dan, whatever you go by, Jan, and Markup for your topics for next week.
Got it.
And at this point, we really can't change dates on them anymore. We're getting to the point where we're squeezing up into that time frame where we just can't reschedule. So
right.
At this point, if you can't make it, just record it on your own and give us a link or something. And that way you're still presenting, but it's not live. I mean, that way we can at least benefit from it.
Okay.
What did everybody think of? Did anybody have any ideas on an application moving forward?
I really like that restaurant idea.
Okay.
Yeah, that one sounded good to me. You threw so many out. I can't even remember what they all are.
Yeah, I'd
now.
have to go through what some of your ideas were.
Yeah, sorry. That's how my brain.
I could tell you were on a roll.
I just start throwing stuff to the wall and see what sticks. Here it is.
Yeah, you brainstormed and came up with like 9 of them all in a row, and I'm like, whoa!
There were a couple pages I was looking at that had different JSON feeds, because that seems to be like the hardest thing to meet for this class. Like the rest of it, you can easily get all these CSS things to work around it and different events that you want to do. And then the JSON stringify, that's all going to work into your XHTML or XML HTTP request. So that's why I thought, you know what, I'm just going to focus on that. If I can find a feed that'll drive me to an idea for something. So
Yeah.
You don't have to have a feed. It does make the application a lot more interesting, but you can have just a static JSON file on your server if you wanted to just read that.
Okay.
But I think students are much more excited when they can get something that's a restaurant API or a weather API or something like that. It's more real.
Yeah.
And are those APIs there something that the websites have to like enable or give you access to?
So it depends. Some of them leave them open. Others require authentication, and others require payment. So
that's why I wondered if some of them you had to pay to get.
It all ranges. So,
okay.
Like with Edmunds, I'm trying to pull it up for you so you can get an example of what they talk about. First off, you do have to authenticate with Edmunds for car data, and they also do tiered pricing. There is an availability, though, for, like, here's the tiers they talk about. Like, this is the exploratory, I think enhanced. These 2 are free. And then once you get up here, you're starting to get charged. And it talks about the different levels here. So notice this one for testing and education, so I'm covered. So. But it's just a way for
Testing
you to...
covers quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. I mean, all it is you're sending it... Like in this one, the way you call to the API is you do... this is the base URL. Vehicles in the base URL. Version 2. It looks like they had version 2. But then you could do all these different, so like there's your model, or your make, sorry, where you can then call out different stuff from Lexus or Chevy or Ford or whatever. So you change the URL based on what you want to get. And then this one at the
So you could already do some pre-filtering with that, where you're only pulling the Lexus ones, not everything.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you change all of this up. They give you, oh, and here's, look at all these codes. This is what I was talking about earlier. See all these 400, 500 ones? Bad codes. So.
Okay.
404, I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah, 404 not found, yeah. And then they go into examples of how to do an API call to it. And see, this is all JSON. You just do an XML call to it, an XML HTTP call to it, send it this JSON in a stringify, and it'll return other stuff. Here's the response from that query up there. I think it's that.
Okay, so that's what you're sending it, and then that's what the server sends back. Okay.
Yeah. So it'll send an object. This is basically an object that it's sending back, because you can tell it's an object because it's in the brackets. And then so it has an element of ID, name, submodel, which then has 2 sub attributes, I guess you'd call them, as part of that. And then trim is another attribute of it, and then it's done. So, and it goes a lot more into it, which I'll have to look at that. But, ooh, this is what I was gonna. No, I want the showcase. Come on. There was one that it showed really good what it was doing. This is windshield repair. Where was it? No, that is not it. It was here. Yeah, here it is. So each time you change one of these, so this, I need to look through their code, but I think they got this static from their page. So they send the year, and then it makes a call out to 2014 is probably too new. 2008. So it makes a call to Edmunds and says, hey, how many makes were there in 2008? And it returns this list to it. So it builds this list dynamically from that API call. And because I love Chevy, you click on Chevy, and then it returns all the models for Chevy in that year. And this is all in an XML HTTP request in the background with Java, powered by that Edmontons.com BS. So, and then it can return photos in JSON. It can return reviews. It can do a lot of cool stuff. So like this here, well, minus the costing, but all of these different models here, that's all from that Edmonton's data, and then this is their data mixed in with it. And then these are the photos retrieved through that same API. So they look like crap, but
cool.
And reviews. So so yeah.
Cool.
That's an example of how you use an API call, the XML, HTTP, and JSON, and parse, and stringify, and all that good junk.
See.
Okay. Makes a lot more sense now.
Okay. Well, I mean, we can go with the restaurant one. That actually works really good with the Google Places one, because you can use the phones or whatever mobile devices location data to be able to find out where they are. Then you can call out to Google Places to get you the map where they're at, draw it on there, and then you can also tell it search for this kind of stuff around me. So
okay,
you could do the autocomplete, but whatever. It's not what we're looking for here.
Yeah.
So here's some JavaScript examples. So see, here's the place details that you can get through a JSON or an XML HTTP request. and then you could search. So we would basically have a search on different categories of types of food that, depending on what you selected within there, and depending on your location, you could give it a radius, and it would return all the different results from that and draw it on a map. So then as you click on each one, it would then go do another API call to go get different details about the place, like reviews and stuff like that.
I'm going to be rude and interrupt here really quick because I've got to take off.
Okay.
Any questions I can help with? It sounds like you guys are doing great. I was really impressed with your meeting tonight. That was covering some great ground. Can I help with anything?
I appreciate you stepping in. Not at this point for me. Anybody else?
I'm good.
Not at the moment.
I wondered, Brother James, on the journaling part of the class, are we supposed to turn that in completely at the end or along the way we do the code topics?
The journal is what you turn in the very last week is not just a collection of what you've written in the previous weeks. It is a summation of what you have learned. So you should write it during the course of the class so that you remember what process you were going through. But what I expect is just, and I want to see what you've learned that you will take with you into your professional career or other environment.
Okay, thank you.
That actually makes a lot more sense than what I was thinking it was.
Yeah, me too.
Good. I try to not be too verbose when I put my emails out, but then also I think I need to try and explain things as much as possible because the syllabus is not always very clear. So yes, I want you to tell me this is what I learned about myself in new situations. I will react better. I will do this when our team was starting to fall apart, when Tiffany was driving me nuts and Chuck didn't understand what was going on. Then we found out this is how we could take a step back and make things work.
That last one was a lot more likely than the first one.
Okay, all right.
No. Come on, Dan. You and I are on the same level here.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, I'm signing off, but really a very good meeting, you guys.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you looked at the DOM example that I sent in my email this week, but that's kind of a fun thing to experiment with. DOM torn apart and the tree structure exposed.
Okay. I'll take a look at it.
All right, good night.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to sign off as well. It sounds like my wife needs some help with Fletch, so.
Okay. Well, just keep your...
So wait, what happened to Fletch?
He had his tonsils and adenoids removed today and tubes put in. So apparently his tonsils were blocking 70% of his airway.
Right.
And his adenoids were so large that they were completely obstructing his eustachian tubes. So his ears could not drain at all. And so he apparently, when they went in, they said that they had just like really thick, gross mucus in his ears. He's surprised he could even hear very well at all, which I don't think he was.
Yep.
So he's just unhappy at the moment because he's in pain.
Yep. Cold stuff. That'll ease his throat a little bit.
Yeah, well, the thing is he hasn't been able to breathe out of his nose for basically the past year.
Right.
We brought him in a year ago, and they're like, well, hopefully he grows out of it. And we brought him in again, and they're like, nope, he's not growing out of it. It's getting bigger. So it's amazing. Like, already he can breathe out of, you could hear him through the doorway, him breathing so loudly before. And now you just can't hear him breathing at all.
Yeah.
Now you guys are going to be checking to be sure he's alive because you can't hear him breathing anymore.
Well, that's what we were telling the doctor. The doctor was saying, like, yeah, you're not going to be able to breathe. I'm like, that was one of the ways that we could tell whether he was in trouble or not.
All right, well, you go take care of him. I'm going to sign off too.
He'll bounce back, don't worry.
Yeah, the doctor says at his age, they usually bounce back really quickly, so I'm not worried about it. Just in the meantime, my wife's about ready to pull her hair out, understandably so.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right,
Have a good night.
See ya.
I'm going to take off too. I'm in the middle of a Photoshop project.
All right.
So thanks, Olan. Have a good night.
See ya.